This doesn't make any sense. Christina, can you explain what this is all about?
I'm not sure.
Okay, don't play fucking dumb.
Fuck you.
Hey, everyone stop.
First of all, congratulations on this movie. I was just so blown away by it, and I just really couldn't stop thinking about it for days after I watched. And one scene in particular that's really stayed with me is when the father starts talking and walking around. And I'm going to be honest, I was a little bit unsure how I felt at first, but by the end of it, I just found it to be so powerful. Can you talk a little bit about developing that scene? Like, what did that look like? And can you maybe say a little bit how you want people to sort of react and feel when watching it for the first time?
Well, just so you know that writing it, I also was very unsure when he appeared. It was one of these things where I thought he would stay out of screen, and then suddenly I wrote the screenplay forward, and so suddenly there he was coming out of the room, and I was like, oh no, like this was such a neat, simple story until this, but that shakeup actually got me very excited about telling this story. And this whole writing of this and making of this film has been just going on gut instinct rather than trying to overthink it. Ultimately, looking back, I think at it now, the idea of getting a chance to say that you are sorry for something, that you love somebody in maybe a way that you weren't able to, and that there's some things about me that you may not know, that just felt, it felt needed for me. It felt needed, even if the sisters aren't hearing this. I felt like as an audience member, I really wanted to hear what the father had said. And I felt like suddenly the film went from being a film that set up a certain rule and was playing by this rule to suddenly not. And I want that to be, I want us to go into directions that we weren't expected. That's kind of the amazing things that films can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like the fact that the cast is so small and tight is what makes this movie so special. But was there ever a version of the script where we saw more characters? Maybe we had Katie and Christina's daughters come in, or we saw that other side of those phone calls. I'm curious if you had to sort of make it smaller and smaller, or if it was always sort of that contained.
It was always contained. It was always knowing that this was is going to force a conflict by making sure that they're together and it's just them, and that they were facing each other in a lot of ways for the first time in this particular way, and having to being forced to see each other in maybe a way. I mean, what other way as adults do we really gather and get to spend days and nights and separate, and everybody understands that our phones could be off and we're unreachable and we're not going to be checking emails? Like, that felt very specific to this situation that I've gone through and related to. And so it was very intended to be in this apartment, for it to be a real apartment, a real New York City apartment, to get the chance to shooting in order because of what that affords once you're kind of not moving around and not going, well, we can go here on this day and this day, but suddenly we're just being dictated by the light more than anything, whether we can shoot in order. So it created a working environment that I had missed since doing films that were quite bigger in scale. Since this movie is so centered sort of on the female experience, I feel like the more obvious choice might have been to have it be like the mother that brings them together. But I think the fact that it is the father adds such an interesting and different sort of layer. I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about this decision to make it the dad. Yeah, I thought that it was also a way to recognize that I'm a guy writing this story about women, that it's his three daughters, and that it was being shaped by how they saw him seeing them. Like, I wanted to be acknowledged that it wasn't like I'm trying to tell this from inside of really from being a sister. It's just a relationship that I feel like any of us could relate to, which is, how are we being perceived by our parents? And I wanted it to be the umbrella, and that were always in the mind. They were always in the mind of, okay, this is the way that they believe they're being perceived, or they're perceiving each other through an outside world. It felt correct. Again, like, there was just no question. It's not like I did another version of it. It just felt, and then including the title, where I suddenly realized, oh, His Three Daughters is one of those titles that tells you, like, this is the struggle in the end, that's the answer. They're just the way he saw them was his 3 daughters. Whether they see each other that way or not is part of the big story.
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea of how people see you and how you see yourself. And I feel like in the days of like internet personality quizzes, there's this instinct to sort of like attach yourself to one character that you relate to the most. But something I feel like that's so brilliant about this movie is that I could see myself in all 3 of them very equally and see where they're coming from. I'm curious how you sort of achieve that balance. I know it's a very broad question, but just the fact that you can have empathy and see yourself in all 3 of them.
Yeah, the reality is that I do see myself, and I've seen myself. It's not like I'm all 3 of them at the same time. I find myself going to each of them, whether I can be critical of myself of being of the person that's just like, I'm going to be the provider. I'm going to just try to figure out how to make the food. I'm going to be the person that's going to try to make peace. I'm going to be the person that's just going to try to lay back and step out of this situation. Like, that's just part of, I feel like, any of us going through such an extreme situation, that we can be each of those people. For me, when I was writing, I started with Katie talking, and then suddenly Christina showed up, and then Rachel. So it unfolded in me in the same way that you see in the film. And when you do something like that, when you're introducing one character after another, the challenge as a writer, and one of the fun things is, how do you find yourself suddenly shifting point of view? And that was very easy for me to go, okay, here I'm Rachel, here I'm Christina, here I'm Katie.
Yeah, I love that so much. And it's always fun to see sort of the insight of how it unfolds and things. And I know you also wrote these 3 parts with these actors in mind, so you clearly had a very strong vision from the get-go, but was there a certain character choice that one of them made that completely surprised you, that you didn't think about it at all when you were writing, but that you ended up really loving?
Well, I could say all 3 of them made choices that I would just, when I was in the edit room or when I was shooting on set, where I'd go, oh, wow, that is, if I think about how Carrie Coon, when she drinks that first glass of wine and what it does for her, like, she has this reaction from that first cup of wine that only I couldn't picture that. That was something that she, of course, brought in. And it's the same thing with that first phone call with Christina to her daughter. Just this conversation of just like, yes, it's written that she goes to tears. How Lizzie was able to bring that in this very authentic way and playful way, in a way that suddenly I could really picture Mirabella and what her relationship to her family is. And then the same thing, there was these moments, let's just say with Natasha out on the bench, which it's written, she's sitting out there, she's thinking to herself, she's hearing certain things, she's smoking a blunt. Then you're actually shooting it and you're seeing this person take this kind of feeling more than anything and grounding it and making it the only thing I can imagine at this point.
Well, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure getting to talk to you, and I'm just so excited for everyone to get to see this movie.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.